Ladies and gentlemen, boys, girls, everybody out there who is watching, I have the pleasure of being joined today by our good friend Beto O'Rouke from the great, and I mean great, big old, literally big old state of Texas. How's the barbecue out there, man? Brisket?
Oh, sorry. Did somebody else just cut in?
Nope. I just said brisket. I said barbecue, brisket.
Sorry about that. You know what's funny is traveling the country last year, I ate a lot of what people in other states call barbecue.
Oh, watch it.
Yeah.
Watch it. I wouldn't name states.
I'm not going to name names.
Okay. All right.
But I came back to Texas, and there's just nothing like it anywhere. And as you know, because Texas, as you said, is such a massive state.
Yeah.
There are all local varieties in Tyler, Texas. There's this amazing place that may be the best barbecue I've ever had. It's called Stanley's.
Okay.
Here in El Paso, a little bit of a different variety, something a little bit different in the sauce and the way that the meat is prepared. But, there's just no other place on the planet that does barbecue like Texas. So yes, it's good. It's good to be back in Texas and good to be doing this work where I got to tell you, Andrew,
you can't go there. You can't go there yet, Beto. I'm going to take you there. I know where you're
going
going.
to take me there? I was about to pay you a compliment.
Don't give me a compliment because before I take that compliment, I'm trying to see whether or not your credibility here is going to last. Now, do you sauce your barbecue? Or do you like the barbecue unsauced and seasoned?
Can I give you a long answer on this one?
No, you only have 10 minutes because you're a busy man.
Well, I like it. I like it sauced. However, the reason I like Stanley's is we were, on a campaign swing through Tyler, Texas.
Yeah.
They gave us, we picked up the barbecue curbside. We're on the road. There's no sauce in the bags. I'm like, well, shit, I don't even want to eat this anymore if there's no sauce. But I was hungry and I was humbled by the pangs in my stomach, and I ate it, and it was so good. And it may have converted me to sauceless barbecue. At least.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Hey, brother, I love the sauceless. I also love the sauce. I'm good either way, but I will tell you, brother, I can commiserate with you on those long drives around the state. Now, obviously, yours were longer than mine. My state, I can get through in about a day. It takes you several. But I put on, I think, maybe 25 pounds over the course of the race. But I ate some of the best darn food there ever was that existed. So I'm going to give you a couple moments for your compliment, but please, if it's about me, just tell me I got a nice sweater.
No, I'll tell you what. I left the presidential race almost a year to the day. I think it was the 1st of November of 2019. And I wanted nothing more than to never again in any way be involved in politics or public life.
Yeah.
I felt like I'd done what I could. And I said that to my wife, Amy, and she heard me out and she let me, self-pity for a little bit. And then she said, look, every reason you gave yourself and we gave each other and we told our kids and the rest of the state for wanting to run in the first place when you ran against Cruz in 2017 and 2018. And then when you entered the nomination contest, all those reasons still exist. And there, if anything, it's just more urgent right now. So
that's right.
Look, you may not be a candidate. You may not have an office that you will hold down the road, but you still have a responsibility and there's still something we can do. And so let's just figure out what the hell that is.
That's right.
And get after it. And I'll tell you what, I look to you and I look to Stacey and especially what you did in reaching out to people who had literally been written out and excluded from the franchise and the ability to participate in civic life and our democracy, to vote in elections. And that looked like the most heroic work that one could take on, because not only was it going against the status quo of 2019 and 2020, it's the status quo of the last 144 years, ever since the end of Reconstruction.
Yeah.
What our states in the South have done to keep Black, Latinos, others in communities of color from being able to vote through violence and intimidation and death, but also through onerous voter ID laws and racial gerrymandering and polling place closures and the disenfranchisement of people who have been convicted but settled their debt to society, are now free women and men and should be able to vote. And what I saw you do in Florida was so inspiring to me. And that's what we have made our life's work for this last year, reaching out to all voters in Texas, but especially those who've been intentionally excluded and literally down by law. And there's been nothing more fulfilling in my life. And what's funny is I'm out of it, right? I'm not running for anything. But I am happier than I've ever been because I get to work with all these amazing volunteers. We started a group called Powered by People that is helped to register folks, help to engage with voters, and is now working in literally the final day of this election to turn them out. And so I want to thank you. And I don't think you get enough credit for this because a lot of people see what you did in Florida and think about the impact that it had in that state. It really transcended the borders of Florida and reached us in Texas and other states beyond. So know that what you doing here was absolutely inspired by you and what others who volunteered with you did in Florida.
Well, Beto, you are very, very, very generous. And I know we have just, Sam is looking at me. He's like, you got to get to the questions we're going to ask Beto. But I got to say this, man. I don't know how you give so much of yourself from the point of going all the way across the geographically largest of the 48. I don't know if the 50, I don't know if 49 might be bigger than Texas, but whatever. You guys are a humongous state to get across. You did it. You traveled everywhere in your pursuit to become the United States Senator. I was obviously in my race at that time. Stacey Abrams was in her race at that time. We, I think, together were probably among the three most exciting things, but at least governor's races that a lot of people were sort of paying attention to. Then to go from that, become a presidential candidate, national at this point, but I would argue better. You were national before. What you were doing in Texas attracted the attention of a nation and beyond. And then, because I understand this feeling a little bit, this feeling of, all right, I'm done. I'm checking out. I quite frankly wish I would have had a more productive path to dealing with what loss and what trauma and what an absence of a position by which you can help shift, mold, cultivate society in a way that sees all of us more fairly, more equitably, and creates an opportunity for uplift, regardless of who your mama is, your daddy is, or not, what school they went to, or which ones they didn't. And so I was so enraptured by all of that. I couldn't imagine, man, in this moment now having to dive even deeper. But when I got to the point, getting better, therapy, rehab, coming back out, realizing what was important, which wasn't a title and the comma, but like, am I living in my happiness? Do I feel whole and complete? And am I able to love myself enough that when I then turn outward, I can love the people around me that much greater? Here we are right now. Today is election day. You took your time and talent, energy, effort, fundraising prowess, and you went back home to the great state of Texas because, and we have had some conversations, not over the computer, but on the phone, where we talked about what it meant to have real structural change in our states that would ultimately result in change for the country. In the state of Texas, Republicans, 83 members in the Texas legislature. Democrats, 67 members. Republicans have controlled the House since 2003. Very similar numbers, by the way, to us in Florida. And you decided that you wanted to put your energy into helping uplift candidates who, quite frankly, oftentimes don't get enough attention even from their local papers to make their races important. Tell me, why target the Texas legislature as a place for real political change, because you ran for president, you ran for U.S. Senate, and most people consider that to be the place where all of the change happens. Can you just illuminate for us, like, why? And then beyond that, why do you think it's possible right now?
Yeah, we were talking about all these mechanisms of voter suppression. Literally within minutes of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg's fiery dissent in the Shelby decision, Texas implements the most onerous voter ID laws, against which there would have been a check if the Voting Rights Act had not just been gutted by the Roberts Court in 2015. In the years since then, 750 polling places have been closed in the state of Texas, and that's more by a factor of 2 or 3 maybe than any other state. And as you know, we're one of the fastest growing states, and those polling places were closed in those fastest growing Black and Latino neighborhoods in the state of Texas. So when you see, as we did during the primary this year, lines stretching 6 or 7 hours long at Texas Southern University, which is one of the great historically Black colleges in Texas, that's not just a factor of voter enthusiasm. And it's not just like, go heroes, standing in line for your democracy. Those are people who were subjected in the middle of the deadliest pandemic of the last 100 years to a life-threatening condition in order to cast their ballot. And it was intentional and 100% on purpose. In 2017, federal courts described the political districts of Texas as a racial gerrymander. And those are just 3 examples that we could go on all day. And as you know, and I don't think enough people beyond this conversation do know, and certainly I didn't until very recently, all of that is really defined and directed by the state legislature. I mean, yes, federal laws like the Voting Rights Act and decisions of the Supreme Court all have bearing on our ability to access the polls and the franchise and our elections. But it's the state legislature that draws the boundaries and draws people in or out of democracy. They're the ones who closed all those polling places.
That's right.
They make it easier or harder for you to vote. And so I think as I began to grasp that anything that we want to do, confronting climate change before it's too late, expanding access to healthcare in the least insured state in the country, reducing gun violence, criminal justice, policing reform, only becomes possible when everyone in the electorate is engaged and is able to have their will reflected in those that they elect to represent them. And that just doesn't happen in Texas. We were 50th in voter turnout because of these voter suppression tactics. And so the state legislature, for me, became the focus. And these state house candidates, these Democrats running for state house, who, Andrew, in one of the most beautiful, poetic, political forms of justice that I've seen, are overwhelmingly women and women of color and Black women who are running in a state that has forever tried to suppress or intimidate or exclude their votes. They're not just voting, they're running for office. And should they win, not only will they produce a Democratic majority and have a seat at the table in redistricting in 2021, but I actually think they'll flip the concept of coattails on its head, and they'll send voters and excitement and energy up the ballot to Joe Biden. We won't be waiting for Joe Biden to rain votes down on us. And it's those women and those candidates who are running these really heroic races that, as you know, often or maybe always go unsung or unrecognized. And so that's where I felt like we could make the greatest impact. And frankly, that's where we were most inspired by the candidates and the campaigns that they were running. And so I'm really excited. I mean, we are just hours away from the polls closing here in Texas. And you asked, how can it happen? We're 9 seats down. And the good news is, in 2018, when I was running against Cruz, we actually won more votes than did Ted Cruz in 9 of those districts that we want to pick up. So we know the voters are there. We know that 1.1 million new voters have registered just since the end of that 2018 race. And so it now becomes a matter of turning those voters out. And as you know, Texas went from dead last in voter turnout to first in the nation so far through early voting. If we can keep that going today, then we win that majority. And we may win those races further up ballot. So pretty exciting day for Texas.
Hey, listen, man, I know that it is. And Beto, we may be among the very few who actually believe in this concept of the up ballot momentum. And I like to couch it in the sense of, and I think we may share this. Yes, when you have a presidential on the ballot, sure, there are people who are going to come out in that 4-year cycle who don't typically show up in those every 2-year cycles. But you also have this group of people who, for whatever reason, have thrown their hands up to democracy. They've given up hope that the system could actually work for them and their homes and their lives. And so when they meet that young man, that young woman who knocks on their door and says, I'm such and such, and I just want to be your voice in the state capitol so that we can expand Medicaid and that you don't have to go into intergenerational debt because you fell sick. Or we want to ensure that teachers are paid a wage that they can live on, or that nurses have the PPE that they need in order to keep us safe during this global pandemic. That's when you end up touching people at a level where they're like, okay, I can now associate going into a ballot box and voting and something showing up at my doorstep or on my dinner table. And this reverse thing, and the power of it is that I think it has the ability to pull those people who were never going to go, who had maybe thrown their hands up. And now they say, oh man, it's worth it. This is our time. This is what we can make happen. But I am interested in knowing from you, today is election day around the country. Obviously, these, what I would call Beto seats, and that's not to blow up your ego. That's simply to say these are seats that a Democrat, a progressive Democrat, won in a statewide race that then went to the Republican in the legislative race. So these Beto seats, those are really important, and I understand exactly where you're going there. What is the Beto state? What has Texas been able to accomplish between your race, 2018, and where we are, 2020, that gave Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and some of their largest surrogates around the country, including yourself, the belief that this may be the year that you could flip Texas from red to blue?
You know, what I'm beginning to understand, and I wonder what the story is in Florida that is comparable to this in Texas. You know, your race was electrifying in Florida, Stacey's in Georgia, ours in Texas. What I've since understood is there was a ton of groundwork over a number of years that I really was unaware of. There are groups in Texas. I'll give you one example, the Texas Organizing Project. So grassroots organization and is super disciplined about focusing in the counties of Harris, where Houston is, Bexar, where San Antonio is, Fort Bend, Sugar Land is, and Dallas County, where, of course, Dallas is. And you know, I mentioned that Texas for so long has tried so hard to keep Black and Latinos, Black voters and Latino voters from participating in our elections. They keep that discipline in going to the homes of those low propensity voters who are registered, maybe voted in 2008, maybe voted years before that, and have never turned out since. Perhaps because, as you just said, Andrew, government hasn't really followed through for them. They got their hopes up. They thought, if I vote for this hope and change, then my life can be better. Perhaps because all of us didn't do the job of making sure there was a state legislature that could be there to help, or county commissioner, or whatever it was going to take. But they've dropped out, and TOP goes to their doors and begins a conversation, not in October or November of the election year, but maybe January of the year preceding, checks back in, builds trust and civic engagement at the local level. And then when the conversation turns in October, November to the presidential election, those voters are engaged, and they know that we are not just showing up, or TOP is not just showing up, when they'd like a vote. They're continuing the work and the conversation that includes this election November. That work has been going on in just that one organization for the last 8 years. And the number of Black and brown voters with whom they've engaged, the number who have registered over the last 4 years, 1.9 million Texans have registered to vote. In a typical 4-year cycle, it's about 700,000.
Yeah, wow.
So orders of magnitude greater, right? Almost 3 times the normal number of registrants. And in the most diverse swing state in the country, 1.5 million registered Black voters, 5.5 eligible Latino voters. The largest Vietnamese-speaking community is in Houston, outside of the country of Vietnam. The stereotype that so many hold of Texas just does not, bear out when you're actually here. And I think that diversity and the genius in that diversity is really coming out right now. And so that's how I think we got, Andrew, from 50th in voter turnout to first in the nation ballots cast so far. And I think that's why the polls, there was a Morning Consult poll yesterday, and I don't know if I've seen a poll with this level of precision. It had Donald Trump 48.1% in Texas, Joe Biden 48.1% in Texas. Typically they say, well, they're within the margin of error of one another. No, this thing is coming down to the wire without really, relatively speaking, a dime invested in Texas by the top of the ticket. And we love them, and we know that Florida,
I know that feeling, yes.
In Pennsylvania, there are a lot of places. They had a huge map in which to compete, and this is a big, expensive state in which to play. But that is owing to the Texas voter and organizers that have reached out to them, not just this year, but over many, many years. And so I think this is a pretty beautiful, powerful story of democracy under stress and democracy coming through. And we'll see if it comes all the way through tonight.
Yeah. So, Beto, we're out of time, but I got to ask, predictions, and not just our most optimistic, we're Democrats and we want to get back to some sense of sanity. But I will tell you, I'm in the state of Florida, and people are nervous as hell. And they're nervous as hell because my race gave them PTSD. The last Democratic governor's, nominee gave them PTSD. We don't believe a damn poll if we wrote the poll ourselves anymore in my state. We just don't believe it. And so I wonder for you all, as you have traveled and campaigned, what are you hearing, feeling, and really mostly what's in your gut about what we may see either a few hours from now or maybe a few days and weeks? Not sure yet.
So I was on a phone bank yesterday. I'm going to look at my notes because I write every person I talk to. I write down their first name and just a brief description. So I've had this woman. She was my 14th call yesterday. Her name is Dinora, and she lives in Rowlett, Texas. And I said, is this Dinora? And she said, yes, this is. Who's speaking? I said, this is Beto, and I'm calling to see if you have a plan to vote tomorrow. We were talking yesterday, Monday, ahead of today's election date. And she said, yeah, I've been thinking about that. And I said, well, do you know where your polling place is? And she said, no, I don't, but I'm sure I can look that up. And I said, look, let me just enter your address. I'll find it for you. It was the Rowlett Community Center right next to the Rowlett High School. And I said, it looks like it's about a half mile from your home. I don't know what your schedule is tomorrow, but it opens at 7 a.m. You might want to get in early and just make sure you get that vote cast. And she said, okay, I will. And I said, well, as long as I have you on the phone, Dinora, will you tell me why you're thinking about voting? And she said, actually, to be honest with you, I wasn't going to vote. But over these last couple of weeks, when I see what's happening in this state, and she said, as a Latina, when I see what's happening to my people, I feel like I've got this obligation or responsibility to do this. And it felt, and you've probably had conversations like this, it felt fated that we were supposed to talk, that she was thinking about voting, hadn't quite made the plan yet, and that I was on the phone. And you phone banked. Most of my calls are hang-ups, voicemail, or wrong numbers. And I got through to her, and man, I felt, it's just one vote, but I felt so good. And so if I extrapolate from anecdote, recognizing that the plural of anecdote is not data,
right?
But if you asked for my gut, that call with her yesterday felt like the way so much of Texas is turning out right now. Folks who have no voter history or very light voter history turning out by the millions. Yeah. And I think that they are turning out for us, those of us who believe that this country can do so much better than Donald Trump. Yeah. And they're turning out for themselves and their families and their communities. So I'm pretty hopeful. But I'm like you. I felt really damn hopeful. Yeah. I thought I knew we were going to win. You
and me both, brother.
So I'm not going to make a prediction, but I'll tell you, I feel pretty good.
Okay.
And I again have to thank you for staying in the game and engaging with people and giving people hope. I think it has been in such short supply over the last 4 years, and we're allowing ourselves to feel that again right now. And you've been a big part of that. And so I want to thank you. And you've also been a very good friend to me when I have felt very low after some of these races recently. You've always reached out and you've always connected. And I just want to thank you for doing that.
Hey, brother, that goes both ways. When I was at my lowest, Beto, you were one of the people who helped me feel like I was a human again, that I wasn't an alien. Oftentimes, when you are at the helm of some of these races and seats, it's easy to forget that you don't have Superman everything. You may be able to go around the clock, but at some point it catches up with you. And brother, for as much as you are giving, and maybe today will be the day where so much of this culminates with some of our election outcomes, for you and for Amy and for the kids, I just want to wish you all well. We have to take care of and look after our anointed, appointed, selected, and self-selected leaders, because you oftentimes put it on the line and you got to be so strong and you got to deal with your vulnerability in just the right way. And sometimes that causes us not to care for ourselves. And so, brother, take it from me, a person who, when I hit my lowest point, had such deep shame, I didn't even want to look at my own children. And so what it means to come out of that right now and to be in a space where I don't feel like an alien, where I feel like a human, and that we can do things that contribute, similar to the energy that you felt around the work that you're doing right now in Texas. I feel that very same energy inside of me, brother. And I just want to thank you for keep getting up, for keep fighting. Where I am right now, man, is every day you get up, you put your shoe, your clothes on, you get out there, put one foot in front of the other, and hopefully you make the next best good decision for yourself until you reach the next good decision. But none of us are beyond mistakes. And I used to say this on the campaign trail when I was running for governor, referring to former felons returning and deserving their rights, is that nobody should be judged forever by their worst day. And for those of us who have put ourselves out there and we've stood the scrutiny and we've run for these offices, you've gone much higher, certainly than I've ever aspired to, but you have been in the arena. And one other Texan who you may or may not know, Brene Brown, likes to, in her book, quote Teddy Roosevelt about the man or woman in the arena. My therapist puts it this way. She says, Andrew, you have to operate at a vibrational frequency where not every sound can reach your ear. And so, brother, people will say what they want to say. You are out there doing the work. You are in the arena. We need you there. I have no idea what the future holds for you and for your family. I just know it's extremely bright. And I know that for no other reason than the fact that you have the right heart and the right head and the right motivation and the right spirit that is being demanded in this new season of our leaders. And so I'm excited for you, brother. Thank you for being my friend. Thank you for helping to hold me up. And if there's anything I can do to help you, brother, I'm there. Today is election day. Y'all get out there and vote. We're talking to brother Big B right now. And a little bit later, we're going to be talking to some other Texans because Texas thinks they're coming after Florida. They're trying to flip before we flip. Let's make it a friendly competition and flip at the same time, brother.
Let's do it. Let's do
All
it,
right.
man. This is the best part of my day on one of the biggest days for any of us here in Texas. We're so grateful that you're giving some of the spotlight to this state. And yeah, I like your attitude. Let's see Florida and Texas come through the tape at the same time.
That's right.
All right, let's do it.
And of course, Stacey wants to see Georgia beat both of us, but it's okay.
That's right.
We'll bring Georgia into the fold too, man.
I like that competition. Absolutely.
Brother, give my best to the family. I cannot wait till we are out of this great COVID disaster so I can come and we can get some dry rub barbecue together, man.
Let's do it. I'm in. Open invitation for you here in El Paso.
Thank you, brother. Take good care, but and please give my best to your family. Happy holidays to y'all.
Likewise. To you as well. Keep it up.